Okay, it's 6 o'clock, we'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is Rick Martin.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. I thank everybody for getting everybody here today safely. Please look over this meeting today. Give everybody's patience and respect and the best intentions. Also, I'd like to make sure that if you protect the board and not allow the board to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. Say all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, members. Welcome guests. We'll move first, assuming I'm agenda halfway memorized, to our public comments, starting with Rod Rudy. Is that right?
Good evening, directors, thank you for your service to the districts and the board. My name is Robert Lee. I'm with Texas Groundworks Management. TGM is a landscape maintenance contractor that services runs and HOAs. We've been in business for 25 years and members of the AWP. There's a card in front of me that has a list of our major services. TGM does everything from installs to master plan communities to small area mowing, servicing, as I said, runs and HOAs. We do mowing, tractor mowing, we do tree care from planting to removal. We also do irrigation installation and repair. TGM does site work, concrete work, we do erosion control, retention pond installation, as well as seeding and maintenance. We have SW3P qualifications, we do the stormwater plans. We also do park improvements, walking trails, we do playground installation. TGM also has a landscape architect on staff, and we're able to design and build for any special projects that may come up. If you're doing a review of any of your services, we would like to be able to give you a proposal, but otherwise, we would just like to let you know we're out there, we're here for you. If you have any emergencies that come up, any type of erosion control, something of that nature, we would be able to respond to you immediately. That's all that I have. Any questions for me?
Have you ever worked for us before?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. Thank you very much.
Mr. Jerry Holman.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'd like to discuss several items on the agenda. First one is item number 6, authorize general manager to negotiate and execute contracts for the purchase of groundwater credits. What a great idea. I've never heard that. Buy them cheap, buy them. It'll help us down the road. Excited to see that on the agenda. Hope that goes like I think it does. Hopefully we don't have to pay disincentive fees because we have all these credits that we buy. Pennies on the dollar. Oh, by the way, for all you guys listening out there, if you were ever gonna go up on your rates, now's the time. Because once they start going up on their rates, there won't be any room. You might talk with your consultants about that. Item number 10, discuss the findings of the rate study, $180,000 rate study. Ideas on increasing water rates. You definitely got to pay what you're paying at a minimum. That's a good starting point. We did tell you at one time, it's real easy to lower rates. It's much more difficult to raise them. And I think you'll be facing that situation in the near future. Item number 11, discuss possible use of the improvement fund. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I will harp on the fact that any funding that you give back, as you said, you're gonna have to refinance and use again and pay softballs. It makes no sense. You need to utilize all of your funding to build out your projects. There's no money to give back. You'll just refinance. Discuss proposed conservation groundwater rate. Last thing there, I think people were upset because they seen that policy as an attack on them. As being good stewards and keeping their water pumps running and all the money that they spent. That's why they were upset. And maybe there was a misunderstanding there, I'm not sure. But I know the district spent hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars keeping their wells in good shape. And they don't want to be punished for using them when they need to use them. So hopefully you guys do not vote to pass it if it comes up for a vote. Thank you.
Chris Carter.
Got some handouts for you guys today. Good evening. I'm here tonight to continue this discussion on the authority's office relocation. Tonight you will be voting on whether or not to authorize Mr. Chang to execute a new office lease and move the authority into a financially distressed office building that's about 6 miles southwest of here. If you vote in favor of this new lease, the rent burden on the authority will triple, and this will result in wasting several $100,000 per year of the public's money, and millions of dollars will be wasted over the course of a long-term lease. That is not what this community wants. If you search online right now, you'll see that the authority has an average Google rating of only 1.2 stars. I've included 3 pages of these reviews in your handout so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I've read all of the reviews, and not one single person has complained about the location of the authority's office. As you can see in your handouts, they are complaining about the fees on their water bills. The members of this board, as public servants, should not ignore them. Your own general manager, Mr. Chang, has repeatedly expressed his concerns about the increased rent burden. Tonight, I'm asking you to trust Mr. Chang's judgment and approve the very first option that he recommended to this board, which was to relocate to Cornerstone Tower. He and his staff toured and vetted that location before ever presenting it, and they liked it. And they're the ones who actually have to come to the office every day. The board members only come once a month, and most of the community members never even go to the authority's office. But they will be the ones who will be forced to pay for this wasteful spending. Cornerstone Tower is a premium office building, and the market rents there are much higher than here. I only offered to price match this rent because of my good relationship with Mr. Chang and the rest of the staff. Please take the discount that I'm offering and pass this cost savings on to the community. I've been reserving space for the authority for 6 months now, and if the board doesn't vote to take the free upgrade tonight, I will return that space to the market at its true higher value. Please also note that the authority's current lease is in effect through 2029. The first lease term ended on March 31st. Per the lease, the authority was required to both provide written notice of non-renewal no later than January 30th and to move out by March 31st. Neither of those have happened, and this lease has renewed for an additional 36 months. I've attached this clause in your handouts on page 7, along with the notes from your attorney where she acknowledges both the renewal clause and that a month-to-month holdover was never an option. If the authority relocates to anywhere other than Cornerstone Tower, it will be required to pay the rent at 2 locations at the same time. I'm asking the board to trust your general manager and don't ignore the priorities of this community. The public isn't asking for an expensive office relocation. They're asking for the fees on their water bills to stop increasing. Moving to Cornerstone Tower is by far the best option for the authority and for this community. Sorry.
Okay, are there any other members of the public that wish to make comments? Seeing none, we'll move into messages from the board members. I'll start with Anything, go over to Ron and come back this way.
I don't have anything. No.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I've attended several regional meetings recently, and I've also engaged at the city level. And there's a consistent focus on infrastructure costs, funding opportunities, long-term water supply challenges, and public trust. Those conversations directly relate to what we're dealing with here. So I think it's important we stay proactive and aligned with what's happening at the broader level. As regional partners with the city of Houston, their issues ultimately impact reliability and cost for our ratepayers. And I would like to comment on, I guess, Chris Carter. I want to be sure if Mr. Chang believes that we're making the right move with this location. Hopefully we're not double paying. The ratepayers, they probably don't realize the things that have gone on security-wise. They're kind of sketchy. And the reason for us having to move, I know that Wilbur Mall's now going under a curfew on the weekends, I think, for teenagers, if you're 18, under 18, yeah, there's a curfew. So it's kind of spooky out there going down East 16. It has been for a long time. So I know the reason we're trying to move, we don't want to spend a lot more money, but we just need to do what's safest for the employees here at the office. So hopefully, we'll be talking about this later, so. That's it.
Okay, and I have no further comments at this point, so we'll move to number 4, approving the minutes from April 6th regular meeting. And I have a small amendment to it. If you turn on page 3, and I didn't see this until this afternoon. If you turn on page 3, there's about 1/3 of the way down. It says Director Ramsey acknowledged, blah, blah, blah. Strictly speaking, that's one of these things that records what we said and not what we did. So I would amend to strike that particular 2-sentence paragraph.
Where's, on page 3?
On page 3 under proposed rate order change.
Can you read what it is?
It just says Director Ramsey acknowledged the proposal to amend the rating order had generated a whole lot of feedback. Discussion ensued with each director providing their input. So,
You just want to leave it?
I just wanted to leave, yeah, because it's not what we voted on, it's what we were talking about.
Okay, and I have a couple of,
Just want to clarify, you want to strike the first sentence or both sentences?
Both sentences, both sentences.
Okay.
Director Ramsey.
Yes.
I noticed, sorry, it wasn't before today, but I noticed it this afternoon, the adjournment needs to be 7:42 and not 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And, we left out that Mr. Evans, he mentioned, he specifically said, that there was a hearing at the Texas Capitol on Thursday for the Director Data Centers. And I was able to listen to it, so I appreciate you bringing it up. I just thought, let's have it in there, you brought it up. And then the other thing is I would like my comments, I have prepared comments for 3 different parts of the meeting, 3 different parts of the agenda. I would like those added to the minutes, as we've kind of done recently. So those are mine.
We didn't think out loud. Good. More clear. Okay, I'll move to divide the question, let's take it in two parts. One will be those minor changes, striking that paragraph with me, changing the date, and what was the other one, inserting a comment that Mark had referenced? Yeah, that he made an announcement, and it really should be that generic. And then separate that from the issue of we had Director Rao's comments on the minutes this time too. So, any discussion?
I don't think we can vote on something that's not on the agenda.
It's revising the minutes.
Yeah, it's part of the minutes. Yeah, it's part of, or at least that's what she's asking, is we add it on as part of the minutes.
Well, my concern is the minutes have changed, you know. At one time, we wanted what was said, or what was done, or can you repeat what you're
Yeah,
you
record
said?
what is done, not what is said.
Right.
And that's Robert's rules, that's not me.
But then we changed who's writing the minutes and we go back to
Is
the
that what
other.
it was? Okay.
That's my only concern about the minutes.
So the first part, the minor amendments to it,
I move we change the minor amendments.
okay, do we have any objection to that? Hearing none, consider those done, June or Andy or whoever's doing that. Now, would you like?
On that, or-
Well, we did it without objection.
Okay.
Okay, so now the second part, you have, an amendment to add your comments back into the minutes?
Yes,
That's the way
just,
I
it's
understand it.
just attachments,
Okay.
like we've done kind of recently. Just,
What are those comments?
it's what I read last meeting. And recently, Director Ramsey has said, hey, can we attach those to the minutes? And he's done that a couple of times, and it just, I still didn't get sentenced.
Well, I would say it's not automatic. I've done it on particularly notable ones that I thought, maybe
Right.
more notable than others.
I personally, I guess I don't really have a problem if one of the board members wants to add their comments to the minutes. It's kind of like no harm, no foul. That's the way I kind of look at it. That's just my opinion.
Well, I moved the react.
Where's the written?
The attorney asked me for him actually 2 weeks ago. She already asked me. She asked me for him like the days after the meeting, and I could send them to her. Kind of was thinking it
Okay,
was,
I don't wanna take too much time with this, but if we don't have them to vote on, wouldn't it maybe be better to wait till next month to actually
you
incorporate?
heard it though. It's exactly word for word.
I don't remember word for word, what is it?
From last meeting?
It's either, you're the one that usually wants to put on my comments.
Don't wanna move?
Yes.
Personally, I don't think it should be automatic. While I and anybody else can bring it up to the board to include something, I don't think that should be an automatic sort of.
Right, so that's why I thought I wanted to bring it up today.
Okay. Any other discussion? So where are we voting? We're, got two ways to go. I'll leave it up to the board. We can either throw it back a month and make sure we know what we're voting on, or we can just go ahead and put it in without having it in front of us.
You heard it last month. The attorney already asked for it, she has it.
We don't have it.
Okay, we'll wait.
All right.
Suit yourself.
Okay, so let's approve the minutes as amended and have the option of going back and amending them next month for these extra comments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So passed. Okay, sorry that took a little while. finance director's report.
Financial report is as of March 31st, 2026, and all of the detailed reports are in the board document posted on the website. The expense and, design engineering, construction, acquisition, consultants, checks are presented for your authorization and signature, and I'd like to request approval of the financial report.
So moved. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. General Manager's report.
We have one more item under the financial
Oops, I'm sorry.
director's
Yeah, we
report.
moved, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the draft agenda.
We have, the audit report to present for, review and approval, and, have, Clayton with us, Clayton Rogers with, the audit firm to come up and, give his report, brief description. There he is.
Cindy, before we start, you want to mention?
Yeah, the reason this item cannot be or should not be delayed is because we, by state rules, we have to submit the audit to TCEQ and TWDB by mid-May. So I recommend to the board to bypass the 1 month delay to vote on this item.
Yeah, and June had talked to me about that earlier, and I think that's a perfectly good reason to not go with our normal policy on this, so, one question before we get started, Clayton. Is there a way we could, in future years, speed this up 4 or 5, 6 weeks, something?
Recording in progress.
It's very difficult because audit needs to look at complete financial information, and some of those information, the year-end closing data will not be available until end of March. And in this year's case, I believe even beyond March, we got it in the first week of April. So, and of course, the audit firm has to go do their diligence. They will not release a report not going through their internal review. So that make the time window for the board to review very short. But that just, unfortunately, between the practice and the state requirement, that give us only 1 week. However, it's not to say the audit report cannot be revised. We have done that before. If the board has no major issue with the audit report, the board can approve the audit, and then if there's specific issues with the audit report, we can always work with the auditor to make sure that it's getting taken care of.
Thank you for having me today. To address that question specifically, in general, I would agree with Jim's comments that pushing the entire audit up a month is not impossible, but as there becomes some logistical issues there. One thing that we can certainly discuss in the future is that generally, as a matter of practice, we work with about 250 governments around Texas throughout the year. And something that we just do in general is that we tend to not send people drafts until we're done with numbers. Because we found that people don't really like looking at financial reports that are in progress, knowing that the numbers might change as we work through some once-a-year processes with staff. But that certainly, if it's a matter of there being a desire to see something, even if it's preliminary or not totally adjusted, that's certainly something that we could easily do earlier in the process, even if we haven't totally finished our audit procedures. That being said, as Cindy said, my name is Clayton Rogers. I'm a manager with Godzilla Brown & Hill. your audit firm. We're based out of Waco. This is our second year doing your audit. And I'm happy to be bringing a clean audit opinion here to you tonight. And I know it's a full agenda, and so I'll try and keep this short and sweet, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the audit process or these financial statements that are in front of you. You should all each have a copy of the authority's annual financial report, as well as a separate bound letter on our letterhead. So I'd like to start a little bit and talk about the audit process in general. So I think a good place to start is at the beginning. If you'll open in the annual financial report to page 1. Page 1 is the independent auditor's report. So it goes through 3 pages of CPA speak, but to talk in a little bit more layman's terms, what we were engaged to do is to render an opinion based on our audit that the financial statements that are in front of you are materially accurate. That doesn't mean perfect. We don't look at every dollar, we don't look at every transaction. Even if we did, there's certain inherent limitations to an audit. But that being said, it is a high level of assurance that we're giving out based on our audit. That the information, again, is not perfect, but that is suitable for decision making. So for example, one of the very first things we do when Cindy gives us numbers is we round everything off to the dollar. We don't look at pennies usually. So that any number in here might be up or down $1 from what it really is in your system. That's kind of a silly example, but it's the most obvious and first one that comes out in the audit. But ultimately, in that second paragraph, we are rendering an unmodified opinion on the financials. You might know that as a clean opinion. What that means is that based on our audit, we do believe that these financial statements are materially accurate in accordance with accounting principles, and that there's nothing that is inaccurate or omitted that would affect decision making. I know it's something I saw on the agenda, but there's some discussions later tonight about, say, for example, rate studies and what to do with water rates, that type of thing. It's important to understand that as part of the audit, we're not really opining on your financial health. And we don't, in these financial statements, unfortunately, there are no answers like, what do we do with our rates? How do we set our budget this next year? What the audit is for is giving you some assurance that the numbers that you're using to base those decisions off of are reliable. So that if you're thinking about how much money do we have in the bank, where's our fund balance at, you have this basis from which to make those decisions, because that you can feel comfortable that that information is accurate. So we did perform our audit in accordance with both AICPA standards and government auditing standards. There's a separate report in the back of this document that I won't go through because it really goes through everything in much greater detail than what I'm about to say. So to touch on a couple of things with this attached letter, under our professional standards, there's a number of things that we are required to communicate to you as a board. If we had found fraud, if we had found significant problems with the books, if we had disagreements with management over how to account for certain things, those are all things, big scary things that I'd be required to report to you. However, I'm happy to say that there were none of those things, and that this letter reads pretty boilerplate. There are a couple of things I want to point out though. If you'll turn with me to the second page. The first header toward the top of the second page talks about significant risks. And I always like to mention this in our disclosures because it kind of leaps off the page if you're not seeing these all day, every day. When it talks about risk, and that first one talks about fraud risks, it kind of jumps off the page. But I wanted to emphasize that these risks that we're talking about, management override controls and with capital projects, those are not problems that arose during the audit. These are really the big things that we as the auditors are caring about more than anything else at the start of the audit before we've done any work. So for example, the first one, management override, is a presumed risk of any audit of any type of entity anywhere. And the second one simply says that because we know that the authority is engaged in a lot of capital projects with a huge amount of money attached to it, we do various things to beef up our audit there. We assign perhaps more experienced personnel. We select larger sample sizes, we do some other audit procedures we might not always do at other entities. So that's all that's saying, is that those are bigger risks that we responded to, but that they did not result in any audit issues or concerns there. Another thing that I wanted to point out at the very top of the third page, it mentions management's estimate of the fair values of investments. So one of the other things that we do as far as big scary things that might have happened during the audit, the other part of what we're disclosing to you is anything that would be significant changes in accounting policies or significant estimates. Why that's important is that there are some accounting areas that some governments get into where there can be a really huge dollar amount that is a really big guess. And so that's ultimately the information that is designed to provide by us disclosing that to you. I wanted to point this one out in particular, just as a matter of practice, that management generally holds investments at cost throughout the year. And the main reason for that primarily, just as a practical matter, one, and two, because it's a practical matter, is because generally those investments are being held to maturity, and that you need to know what T-bills are going for, because you're not going to cash them in necessarily. But that is something that one of the differences between how the numbers wind up in the annual financial report is that we do report all those investments at fair value rather than what their cost was, which is not, in the grand scheme of $1 billion of investments, it's not a massive, massive difference, but it is certainly something that gets into the millions of dollars as far as changes over time. But ultimately, that is something that's a little different. And the other reason I wanted to bring that up is if you took one thing away from the presentation here, it's that there's really not anything in this document that I would consider to be surprising. In Cindy's financial report that she showed, it kind of, I did a double take because the font is the exact same as the trial balance report that she gave me at the start of the audit. And what I mean by that is that it's the numbers that are in this report came from the very same place from the financial information that y'all are used to seeing. It comes from the same place, it's the same folks that are keeping it. And really the reason that these numbers are different than your monthly reports is really stuff that only gets adjusted once a year as a matter of practical expedient. That some of the construction payables retainage, some of those types of things really are getting accounted for. Really the accounting is driven by when cash is outlaid, because during the year it all comes out pretty evenly, pretty quickly. But that then for this document, we're really getting into getting everything adjusted and perfect for one flashbulb moment in time, in this case being 12/31/25. So with that, there is quite a bit of information in this report, and I'd be happy to go over the financials or answer any questions you might have. But again, in the interest of time, I'll open up the floor for questions.
Yeah, the first one, you were talking about value of assets. I guess it's a two-part question. It's what, if anything, is different about how we may value assets than what you normally see in other agencies? And then the second part is, I know you said it's a practical thing. Well, how often do they have to be revalued? Is it once a year, once a month, daily, like I guess some banks do, things like that?
Great question. So that's one of the practical questions. In the grand scheme of investment valuation, y'all are very far at the low end of risk in terms of not all, but most of y'all's investments are either in pool investments or U.S. government securities. And that generally what you see with those is when you purchase them, the fair value drops down pretty soon after that, and then it rises back up to the coupon price, because that's what you're actually going to get for that when it matures. And so at any given point in time, you could assign a fair value to that. And when we say it's an estimate insofar that if We took a US Treasury bill that was bought on the date that y'all purchased it, at the time that you purchased it for a certain value. If you had multiple different investment holding companies, when they send you a statement, it's going to give, what their system shows as the fair value. And if you held a security, that same security at 5 different banks, you might have 5 slightly different fair values. But we're talking fractions of 1% is, with these securities that y'all have, it's just, it's not a controversial valuation. That being said, the fair values of those floats around all the time, and at any given point throughout the month, they would be different. So it's certainly something that could be marked to market monthly as those statements are available, but that just as a practical matter, again, if you're not attaching something in before it matures, it's just not particularly information that is totally necessary, or at least that's the thinking for why that might not only be done once a year.
And so there's no requirement that we mark to market daily or monthly or.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Our changing that position was like, I think, almost $3 million positive. You know, that's compared to past, and was that more based on our assets or our investments?
Great question. So if you'll turn to page 6, the first few pages right after our independent auditor report have some of the only comparative information you'll see throughout the whole document. Top of page 6 is a very condensed income statement. And you can see that net position did increase $2.7 million. Last year it increased almost 50.7. With the largest thing that jumps off the page to me being the decrease in revenue associated with water revenue. Obviously, there are other factors that contribute to that. When you issue new bonds, there's additional debt service there. Interest revenue is a big part of that as well. But that you can see there that the net position increased a lot less this year, and the revenue was the main reason. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I had one related to that. I emailed it to both Cindy and Clayton. I don't know if either one of y'all got that. And maybe comparing apples and oranges here, but there's a net position on Cindy's statement, and it's not the same as the net position here. I'm just curious as to what the difference is.
Great question. Number one is because it's for a different time period, obviously. I believe you indicated, Cindy, that maybe some of the adjustments for this document hadn't all been posted yet.
Right.
The big difference is just operationally, is that construction costs are more or less expense when payments are made. So that if you look at a trial balance, there's a big old expense line that's got those construction invoices going there. In this document, ultimately, for GAAP financials, those are recorded as an asset. But the accounting software really doesn't like giving budget amounts to asset accounts, so that it's a lot easier to track those capital expenditures as expenses throughout the year. So that would be one thing, is that the first 3 months of the year, any of your capital expenditures would reduce net position in the financials that you're seeing month to month. Whereas if you took construction proceeds and spent on a construction invoice, that actually has no effect on that position immediately.
So if we were to go back and look at the December 31st, Cindy's net position, it would match this. So it is talking about the same numeric quantity.
Would you like to weigh in on that, Cindy?
Once the adjusted, audit adjusted journal entries are posted, then the December 31st problems or balance sheet be in line with what they have.
Okay, so this, what was it, 556 million roughly, that's gonna be roughly what our December, your December 31st? Okay.
Because we will be changing, what we had in expenses into the assets, the assets, the construction in progress was, they completed during the year 2025, amortization, depreciation calculations, there's multiple, adjusting entries that hit the general ledger, the balance sheet, after the to the 2025 year.
Explain that a little more offline to me, but yeah, okay. I think I have a question.
In other words, as I mentioned earlier, for this document, there's stuff that really is a practical matter. We only adjust everything tightly once a year, like capital assets. When the December 31st financials were originally presented to y'all, all those would still be city expense. So that this net position would be significantly higher probably than what you originally saw, but that it's a big dollar amount, but conceptually, it's a short list of things that are adjusted after year ended. And then we work with her throughout the audit to go through what those numbers ought to look like. And then, once we're happy with them and she's good with them, then at the conclusion of the audit, that's when all those adjustments get posted.
Sure.
I just want to say I appreciate the clean audit opinion and all the work that went into it. As we move forward, I think it's important that we continue to focus not just on financial reporting forward, but on managing the long-term cost drivers reflected in these statements.
Other things, like,
Sure.
and you and I talked a little bit about some of these on the phone, and that's fine, but, one of them was on page 9, where we got into the old conversion credits. And this was something we requested last time, if you recall. Did you notice, I didn't have time to go back and compare with last year, did you notice any material change other than the 2026 line, I guess? Did you notice any real change from 2 years ago to this one?
Honestly, I don't remember exactly what one looked like versus the other, but I'd be happy to compare those two back with you.
That'd be something probably pretty quick for you, but that just hit my mind driving up here. Sure. And I would assume you would copy June and Cindy on it as well, yeah. Which actually Cindy will probably check for you. But on page 10, I notice you've got some 2026 budget numbers here. And I had a couple of questions. Where you got this revenue number of 102 million roughly, what water rates was that assuming? Recall?
Our current rates.
Current rates.
Yes, when we adopted the budget,
So that's assuming no increase to the end of the year. Okay, great. The other one, and you and I talked about it briefly, I don't know if you did any more work on it. If you look at the 2025 actual, still on the same page, right now, the investment earnings was about 52 million, which sounds good, Cindy, but we only had budgeted 3 million. That seemed a little bit anomalous, I think, to both of us. And not that it hasn't been there before, it's been there before, but, do you have any guidance there, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that this is the tricky part, and actually this is why, for the ways that the authority reports, GAAP actually doesn't require budget to actual results as a standalone financial statement. The reason for that is because the data as it appears in here and how you budget is fairly different from one another. As I mentioned, the first and foremost is capital expenditures, that those get reported as assets, whereas budgetarily you kind of report them as expenditures as they're allocated. So that makes comparing budget to actual a little bit of a slippery endeavor. And then of course, and that was, I think, Cindy, we discussed that one of the bigger reasons is that investment earnings, that probably includes earnings on all investments, whereas y'all are focused with the budget more on operating, is that right?
The operating budget, we only estimate interest earnings on our operating funds in that budget. The other funds that are earning interest are not included in the interest earnings, because a lot of that is in restricted funds, debt service reserve funds, interest and CD funds, those are restricted, so it's not like interest on that
Okay, we probably still need to talk about that offline. I understand what you're saying, but my concern is we held that number at roughly 3 days for a long time. And interest rates are quite a bit higher than where we became. Well, that's the part. Hate to have all the questions here, but I got one or two more. Go to page 11, statement of net position. So if memory serves me, from last year, it was 556 and change. Now it's 559 roughly. So would that be a good picture overall, all in, that we made a little bit more money than we spent? Is that not accurate?
Yeah.
I don't mean to put it in a profit and loss, we're a government agency, but do we actually end up with 2 or 3 million positive last year?
It is an accurate statement, although it is one that I would caution, inferring too much off of it. Because as you said, profit and loss isn't really a governmental concept necessarily. The other thing is that there are several numbers. In fact, if you look up on page 12, under expenses of $60.1 million, over half of that number is depreciation and amortization expense, which is not a cash number. In other words, that's the cost of your finished assets amortized out over their useful life. That's an accounting fiction. It's an accounting entry. It's not a number you have to pay for. Similarly, y'all have to pay principal on your bonded debt. That actually does not change your net position in this document. However, when you have to pay for it, you generally through your operating funds, because those debt service reserves generally have to stay intact, so that your operating income, to use a word we shouldn't be using, but that you have to have an operating surplus to the extent that the debt doesn't service itself, and that you don't, the proceeds you got from the debt are used for something else. So that's why you can see to your right on page 13. On the statement of cash flows, 4 from the top, net cash provided by operating activities is about $65 million. That seems like a really big number. It was about 30-ish million less than last year, primarily because of the reduced revenue. But then you can see further down, cash used by capital and related financing activities, bottom of that next section, is a negative $111 million. And one of the things that I'll point out is, on the second row there, principal paid on long-term debt is $42.3 million. So whereas, that positive cash flow, operating cash flow of $65 million, we put this schedule together based on how GAAP tells us to, but that operating number has to be a pretty big positive, because again, the principal doesn't pay itself and it has to come from somewhere. Bringing all of that back around, it generally could be accurate to say that net position went up and that means we made money, but that a lot of the timing of capital and debt expenditures means that it's a little bit more complicated than just saying, oh, we made $3 million last year. Kind of went a long way on that answer. Does that help?
Any other questions? Give me a minute to look through the rest of the pages.
I'm still kind of stuck on the 3 million thing. So we estimate we're gonna make 3 million based on our cash assets, basically, right? Our operating fund and stuff, we're not on the unrestricted stuff is where we get the 3 million. But why do we limit that to our scope, with that this number is based on all our restricted as well. From an accounting standpoint.
Better if it was an apples and apples.
Yeah, it would seem like that line should be, at budget time should be, an attempt to at least be apples to apples.
Seems like it would be clearer. You know, we've got an auditor here, what would your opinion that be?
That is, the other thing, that GAP generally doesn't require, we present budget actual results for is capital projects funds at general purpose governments, for the same reason that then you open up the can of worms of the timing of construction costs. And then just some of the differences between how capital projects are budgeted versus how they evolve in the real world, just creates some timing issues. Now, you certainly can, and some governments do, go to the effort to try and produce an operating and a capital budget that tries to capture that a little bit more accurately. I think the thinking for why a lot of governments kind of set the capital part aside for budgeting purposes is, if you look at page 13 again, in that second set of numbers, proceeds from the issuance of long-term debt was a positive $203.4 million from that most recent issuance that was in 25. Well, that $204 million has all got a name on it ultimately. In theory, it does anyway. But that whatever, I think the general idea, and I'm not speaking for the staff who manage all these projects, but that the general idea is that since the interest that you earn off of those bonds, you either have to spend on the bond proceeds for the same purposes, or if you make too much income, you might have to send some to the government. The idea is that the interest income is not, it's not so much a controllable, and it's not really something that if the net proceeds of that bond is $203 million, if we know we're going to ultimately have more proceeds coming from interest income over time that's going to get into some amount more than that. Well, the idea is that then really it's all going to come out in the wash, because then either it will pay for cost overages, or that the project can be expanded slightly, or it'll go to arbitrage rebate to the IRS, so that ultimately that $203 million, along with that negative 174 right above it, you've got construction or debt proceeds in, construction costs out, and that the theory is that the interest income on those bond proceeds is generally just going to kind of flow through those two places, and that it's not it does flow to your bottom line in this document, but that it's not a bottom line that you're really ever going to use or be able to direct the use of necessarily. At least not in the same way that your unrestricted income is.
Is there a way out, an easy way out of the 50-something million versus the 3 million? That's, I mean, they were our engineers, we're not accountants. That's the part I think gives us a little bit of grief.
There are several ways out, some of which we might not like as much as others. I mean, we could simply, what a lot of governments do is that they fix the budget to last year's actual, which is kind of like doing that. But that certainly, it's a question of, I could have a discussion with Cindy, and we could come up with something that shows a little bit more full picture from a budgetary perspective. And that there's some, I think what we would see is that there's some options that give maybe a little bit more bang for the buck, whereas fixing this true apples to apples problem winds up being a fairly time consuming exercise, as far as it makes the budget, one, much more complicated to prepare, and two, it makes it a lot harder to understand it.
I should just learn the taste of both. So, is there a way to move this discussion forward to like online, offline mode you were talking about? This is getting really long. I am not an accountant. I trust our advisors, and it's just getting a little long for me. And so, is there a way to take some of this question and answer offline so we can proceed with the rest of the items on the agenda?
So,
I agree with you.
So on motion,
approve the audit report.
Okay, it's been motioned. I have, one other question. This might be directed to June more than Cindy or Clayton. On, or maybe not. If you go back to 26, it refers to a bunch of payments made on the Loose Bayou Interbasin Transfer Project. And at least I was under the impression that we were done.
Projects and payments.
Okay. So about a 30-second rundown on how that's structured. Is it 30 years?
It is a 30 years, okay.
Started doing that.
The first few years, we are only paying interest. And when we start to paying principal,
So Clayton, all of this discussion is really based on the financing of Loose Bayou, not any ongoing activity really.
That sounds like that's, is that what your current statement?
Correct.
yes.
Okay. That's all I had tonight, but I would say that I've looked at a lot of these over the years. I'm not an accountant, but I've looked over the years. This is one of the easiest to follow ones I've ever seen. So kudos on that. Any other discussion by the board? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the annual financial report so that June and staff can get it filed? I believe Ron made that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Cindy. And June, I'm sure you have a lot to do.
Okay, next item, general manager's report status. Amber?
Okay, so first up, we'll have our usual monthly surface water conversion, and as I had said a couple of months ago, we're still in that startup and commissioning phase on lots of different water receiving facilities. So you'll see the month of April, our surface water deliveries did jump up some from March, but we still aren't showing all of the water receiving facilities online yet. So we should see some additional progress again next month in the report. But what you do see here then on surface water deliveries, which is the royal blue bar for the month of April, we're up to 35 MGD is the unit on that one. If you compare it to last month, we delivered about 29 MGD. If you compare it to April of last year, we delivered 30 MGD. So that's an appreciable jump from where we were at, and hopefully we'll still continue to see that pattern as we move forward and get the last of these water receiving facilities online from the 31 to 35 series. Talking about percent conversion, we always look at that a month behind. So looking at March of 2026 percent conversion, with the reported groundwater pumpage, we achieved a 34% conversion for the month of March. That is similar to the percent conversion for last year's month of March. It was a relatively warm month of March for us, so there might have been some additional irrigation than last year as to why the numbers are similar. So we'll continue to monitor that trend as far as percent conversion and hopefully see a significant increase here in the coming months.
Okay, the next one is update on assistance pension.
New phase 1 and phase 2, they are both online. One can from each. Phase 1 is the pumping, the distribution line, and there's a process item which is almost 90 plus. The Houston water team is working on them to finish them. There's some major items, but there's most of them are minor items. So expected to finish those punch list items by June or July 2026. And existing plant should be returning back to operation by May of 2026.
Is that the original 80 million?
Yes, sir.
So we'll have a total of 320 plus 80?
We have 35%.
Okay, well, that's fine.
We'll
So
have 144.
we will get, will still change, just 35%. 300 plus the 31 that existing plan that adds up to 144. There's no question. The next item is I'm asking the board to authorize me to execute a new office lease agreement. As I report to the board last month, I've been in negotiations with staff help, negotiating with the owner of the location that we are intending to move to, and we have reached an agreement. I'm asking the board to authorize me to execute the agreement. It is not hard to do so, but I would like to have the board
Property?
approve. Sorry, the new location we plan on to move into is located at 19450 State Highway 249.
Is this the building closest to Lowe's?
Yes, right next.
Were you going to keep paying to live here?
No, we clearly have different painting with the owner. The attorney was.
Andy, have you looked into that?
I have not.
No, we have asked the real estate attorney. That's their specialties.
So because of the issues with the other tenants, that's what kind of broke that agreement?
We will have to talk about specifics.
Okay, but you're confident we're not gonna have to be paying?
As confident as I can.
If something happens, what's the cost? 2 more years or?
I would not comment.
Okay. When will our attorney know, the real estate attorney? Do we know for sure?
Well, sorry, I don't think he's gonna enter an agreement if the attorney says they're gonna be paying double rate. So I think we're safe. Let June use his best judgment. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I think we need to, if we are going to have a discussion, it needs to be an executive.
Yeah, that's fair. But for the agenda item,
Yeah.
If I recall, the whole discussion started originally after there was a gun pointed at Mr. Evans. And, that at least started the discussion. That at least started the discussion.
Right, you were in the line of fire.
And in that general direction. And I guess, you know, given the comments tonight, are we relatively sure the new location is considerably safer than this? Because that seems to be the issue.
Well, I can't speak about safety because nowadays, you know, nowhere is safe. Right? I can only speak, the main reason I brought to the board our relocation is because the interruption to our daily business by the other tenants. And that was the main reason I brought it up with the board. And we also brought up that with the existing management. Have started moving or relocation process.
I'll make a motion. Authorize the general manager to execute a new office lease agreement.
Any further discussion?
Okay, so you said you're fairly confident that we're not gonna have to keep 2 more years of our current lease. Is that how you feel about that?
I think we ought not to discuss that in the rebuild. Goes into legal issues related to real estate.
It's just probably a lot of money.
Our recommendation is.
So, yeah, if we do that, I suspect that's not gonna completely answer anybody's questions for. Or could we add a part to your amendment or your resolution, Director Fessler, to, assuming Mr. Chang finds all of the terms, et cetera?
Well, I think I thought that
Like you
goes
said,
without saying, though.
like you said, should go without saying, just include that as part of the resolution.
I guess that's a fair amendment, so I have a problem.
Can you just repeat what it is?
Well, same thing that Kelly said, but with the assumption that you have that the legal issues.
We're on board with that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of Director Fessler's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. It passes. Thank you, members.
Next item is asking the board to authorize me to negotiate and execute contracts for purchase of groundwater equipment. So, there are a lot of entities that have earned or paid for the water conservation credit, official name called groundwater conservation credits. And those credits have expiration dates, and some of them are already expired or expired. We have some of those, and recently HGSD, Paris Galveston Subsidence District, has amended their policy to give a new life to those expired credits. And they are stepped up, scheduled to that. When I say that, means some credits have expired for just 6 months, some credits may have expired for 3 years. And based on how long the credit has expired, they give different percentage of the value, they would not restore the full value of expired credits. Anyway, long story short, those entities have a great incentive to sell those credits. And we, as we reported, or Amber reported to the board early when we applied for this year's groundwater permit, we anticipate the shortage of the surface water conversion. So we have used some of our over conversion credit as a deposit to HGSD. At the end of the permit year, if we are indeed short, we will use those OCC to pay for it. And I believe it's let me finish. I believe it's to the authorities and its ratepayers great benefit to negotiate with those entities to acquire those credits at a very reasonable cost, to use those credits instead of using our over conversion credit, which is much more valuable. So since the negotiation, those contracts should be kept very confidential, I'm asking the board to give me broader power to negotiate and execute contracts.
And where would the funding?
Funding will be from operating funds, so
So we've got an item on the agenda, a little further down, for possible uses for the improvement fund. Is that
yes.
also an option?
Yes, now, this particular item, I'm asking for authorization to sign the contract with those entities if the purchase of credit amount is less than $50,000, then I will sign the contract. If it's above the 50,000, then the board will sign the contract.
Okay. Below 50 sounds like it would be with trouble.
Anything
Yeah, I don't know.
we can
Just-
get is.
Okay, fair enough.
Quick question, how much is out there available? What do you think the number out there available is?
What is that?
Oh, I don't have that in front of me, and I don't know that I would even wager a guess on that. So Science District does have a list of the folks who are out there. There might be, let's say, 24 different utility districts, including Bama.
That's probably why we did the list again, right?
I think it's 26.
So good guess of 26 districts
Oh,
or
districts,
totals
okay,
out there, but the actual number of credits is not published.
And do they expire again, or do they have?
Yes, they do.
So
That's why
what-
they have very good incentive to sell as quickly as
So when is the expiration date?
possible.
We don't know.
Varies from.
Is it like 5 years down the road or a year down the road, or on that? With this guess, just some idea of what you think?
All possible. It could be that next month.
If they expire within this calendar year, we could use them to replace some of the credits that we put into escrow that have a much farther expiration date. So that would be the incentive there, is let's trade out the ones that we can keep for longer.
Right. Send the name to them.
So, does somebody have a motion to authorize June to see if we can negotiate a suitable price for these?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would just like to say that I have had the opportunity to discuss this with the general manager, and I am comfortable with this direction and this approach, and I will support this.
Okay, any others? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun work. Operators report, talk about the leaks.
Yeah, actually, that part is, the lead part is not gonna be reported by Infomar. It will be used by.
Let me address this.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So I start from the day one when this happened. April 14th, 7:30 p.m. or 8 p.m. got a phone call from Hess County Precinct 1 stating that the 36-inch water line was leaking and I had to create a sinkhole on North Bend Street. So I called them from her, and Jerry Jones dispatched with the operator. They were there in 30 minutes. I was there also, so they were able to isolate the line. Then we call our on-call contractor, which is APEC. They showed up there pretty soon, by 10 o'clock. Before 10, they were mobilized and site was secured. Traffic control was in place. Security was secured, and they started working on the sinkhole. So we did not find the sink. We did not find the leak right under the sinkhole at all. There is a 36-inch storm sewer which belongs to them. Hess County. That, so it's not our line. We investigated over our line, which did have evidence of leakage, not at the sinkhole in nearby area. We're not sure at this time what is the sole contributor to this sinkhole. Is it our line? Is it 36 storm sewer? Or is it our line? So the goal was on that day to fix the leak, repair our excavation, and the impacted roadway, figure out who needs to take care of it. As of today, leak has been fixed. Tomorrow we will have disinfection process. Day after tomorrow, hopefully, if the back passes, we'll put the line back in service and start working on the sinkhole. That's what we said.
What caused the leak?
The pipe was separate.
At
the
the junction?
At the junction, yes, sir.
Well, you know, we had a leak at Grant and Spring Cypress, I think,
Yes.
where the leak was caused by the contractor installing the line, supposedly, best I can remember, bent the pipe rather than put in a 45-degree section there.
I think that was only guessing, or we didn't do any forensic on that. But that was a good guess by all of us, that there was a lot of stress in the construction put on the pipe.
Right.
That could be a root cause, of that failure.
Yeah. But we didn't find anything like that.
No, we're still looking into it, sir.
Oh, okay.
If the pipe is parted, it's steel pipe,
It's still pipe.
is there any chance that stormwater line caused the stress on the pipe and parted our pipe?
Well, excuse me, the storm sewer line is about 6 feet below the natural grade. Our line is almost 16 feet below grade, so there's pretty good saturation in between.
The sinkhole itself, approximate cause was the storm sewer.
We don't,
We don't know.
Nobody really has an answer.
And as soon as we find out, that's when we'll decide who gets to pay for it.
Say again?
As soon as we find out,
Yes.
then we decide who gets the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Harris County working on it too, or just Raytech?
No, we are,
Just,
we are working.
Do you have any estimate of how much water flowed out? Over what period of time, maybe?
Which is how much water we lost to the mud district? Oh,
I know.
we don't know when the leak started.
It could be 6 months, could be just started that day, could be a year, who knows, when it was.
Wasn't a detectable pressure change in the pipe or anything like that?
Okay. Is there anything you want to report on the operation side?
On the operations side, since the last meeting, we reported a few things back, no water quality issues or concerns have been reported. We've also put on roughly 21 new water receiving sites, since about February, so everything else has been good.
Raj reported on the good news. Infomark would like to report that Raj showed up in his boots ready to work. He did out there. So we were all out there pretty late that night.
True engineer.
All right, well, next, thank you. Next item is the improvements, the leak detection and planning location in the future. I believe that's Director Ramsey's question, and all I can say is, leak detection or water line leak, is always very challenging. We will try our best to look into any possible improvements. That can be in forms of condition assessment. It can also be in forms of smart meter, which by installing a meter in the distribution system, you will know the flow and the pressure between the 2 points within the distribution system. That will be very easily identified if there's a leak. But that's also very expensive review to take on, and I presented that concept to the board about 3.5 years ago, and the cost is pretty high, so we decided at the time not to continue, but with the aging of our infrastructure, that maybe needs to have a second look or consideration. Then, by the way, the 36-inch line leaking is one of the first water line we put in 2006. That's 20 years, although 20 years for steel pipe is not very old.
Right.
Steel pipe can last easily 50 years, so we're still evaluating why cost.
I believe this consumer something would be, leak vector rallies. My interest was primarily, is Raytech already set up where they either own or can quickly rent the leak detection equipment? There's a lot of different types out there.
So Raytech is the on-call contractor who is set to do the repair work. So they are the ones who can definitely excavate. They do have others that they could work with, that they could subcontract to, but their specialty is construction. But there are other firms that are out there that do have both non-invasive and invasive techniques for how to investigate pipes.
Okay, my understanding is TV technology we use this time. It's not even for local. Am I correct? They are they were local. They are local. Any other questions?
You had something too.
I have other questions I've sent to you, and so just when this is over, whether we know that, more things, I think someone was injured, and just, we want to know all the things involved in all this, so, and I emailed those questions right a couple weeks ago, so just whenever it's all completed,
Okay.
look at the
Okay, the next item, this will be an annual occurrence. As the board may recall, last year in July of 2025, the board passed a amendment to our rate order, installed this section 3.08C to establish this new GRP participation fee. In the rate order section 3.08C, there is a very specific requirement for general manager to recalculate that fee annually and present to the board for approval in the forms of resolution. And so that is the purpose for this line item. I'm not asking the board to approve this resolution this month. I incline to or plan on to present the resolution to the board in the June meeting. Pass that resolution and make the new rate become effective in July 1st or on July 1st. But you have all received my memo and the calculation sheet, review attachment A-1. In essence, in short, the rate will increase from the last year's $2.82 by 11 cents to $2.93.
So just in summation, that's the fee that new participants pay on top of the current existing water stream.
Yes, that's correct. No, actually, they have a specific term with a time period they will pay off. In the section 3.A also specified, based on the year you sign up for, you will pay off 30 years from that difference. Oh, that's already approved. So that doesn't.
I mean, the recalculation.
Oh, yes.
So now I understand, okay. So we don't need any action this month or the next month?
No, sir.
No, thank you, can I have this?
Yes.
Okay,
And excuse me, do we need a public hearing on
No, this is not a rate increase, this is simply a recalculation of.
that? Okay.
Next one is, I would ask the board to have discussion and give me the, go ahead to develop an application for TWDB, Taxable Water Development Board, Water Supply Infrastructure Project. I will let Amber speak to that, but just give you the background. The board has asked us to look for grant opportunities to pay for some of our costs. And we have tried many different ways to try to get a grant, free money. And this time we believe we may actually have a legit chance to get that. So Amber, taking over from there.
holding your breath or
As
what?
good of a chance as you can ever have. So the water supply infrastructure grants came from House Bill 500 from the 89th legislative session. And in that session, the LADGE appropriated a little over $1 billion from the general fund towards this one-time grant program. It is a 100% grant program. So it is not something that you can go and oh, let's take this money and leverage it into more money with other projects, with other funding sources, like as far as SWIFT or things like that. So with this project, you can use projects that are in the, so projects need to be in the state water plan. It can be something that you have already started design for land acquisition using SWIFT money, and that you're using construction money from this grant fund of money. So for us, for the size entity that we represent, for what the authority encompasses, we could be eligible for up to $35 million in grant funds. It can only be used for construction-related costs, so we can't use it for anything we already spent it on. And any project to be eligible must be shovel-ready. It must have all environmental permits done. It must have all land acquisition done. It must have the engineering side done, and it must have all of the permitting approvals, like Harris County and whatnot, done. But we also have to be willing, the project, the application itself is due in August. Hold on, I mean, it's 3 pages back where the schedule is. July 30th, okay. It wasn't, I was thinking it was the beginning of August. So it's due the end of July is when the application is due. They will decide who gets awarded a project in the fall, and then the closings will happen either in the winter of this year or through May 1st of next year. So we would have to be strategic on what project. It has to be one that's far enough along that we've got all the approvals, but it also has to be one that we are willing to set aside for a certain period of time while we wait to see if we win the grant funding or not. So we do have several projects that are very near, bid ready, that are to that point of what we would call shovel-ready projects. And of those several projects, they're all on the 37 series. The linear ones, I would not recommend. We only get to submit one project as well. I forgot to say that part. You only get to pick one, and that's it. That's your one shot. So I would not recommend us to submit one that is one of our critical path ones that's early on in the linear projects. But there is a project that seems to be a prime candidate that we do have all of the regulatory approvals done, land acquisition, engineering's ready to go. That is for the water receiving facility connections, and we have broken that up, and that's called 37J, and we've actually broken that into package 1 and package 2. And each of them are in that 25 to 30 to 35, right in that range of what they would be willing to award per contract for construction phase. And we broke it into 2 packages and put the higher priority water receiving facility work in package 1, and then package 2 is for the pipelines that are farther downstream that need to wait for the earlier pipes to get done in order for us to get water to the later segments. So we're recommending at this time for project 37J2 be the one that we would submit. It's the evaluation criteria, it's pass-fail to start with. You must hit all those things that I just mentioned. You have to be ready to go, and environmental permits done, and land acquisition done. And you also, you would have to incorporate normal TWDB requirements into your projects, which we do for everything except for the American Iron and Steel. We currently have an exemption from having to do American Iron and Steel. If we did this project with the grant funding, we would be required to incorporate American Iron and Steel into it, but it's grant funding, so it might increase the project cost a little bit, but that's still within that $35 million range. So at this time, what we are looking to do is just inform you all, the 2-step process. So this one would be about informing you all and make sure there isn't a fatal flaw. And then next month, we'd be coming back to you all with a resolution of support for submitting this grant application. The board's required to do the resolution of support as part of the grant application. I have to actually attach it to the back that you all support this and want this to proceed forward. I had your hand raised, I had a question.
So who makes the decision?
TWDB, so their staff will review all of them. They'll first do the pass-fail and throw out anybody who doesn't meet the criteria. If you're not shovel ready and you don't have all your permits, you're out. If you haven't done your water use survey, the mandatory or water conservation plan, those different mandatory reports, we do them because we have TWDB funding already and they're required of us. But others, maybe they're not playing by the rules and not submitting it, and so they don't have all their stuff submitted, they're thrown out as well. So they're gonna do an initial screening. Then there is scoring criteria, and it's different scoring criteria if you are a retailer versus if you are a wholesaler. So if we are so for us as a retailer, really, the only driver is based upon our population. Now, the bigger the population, the smaller your score does go as far as a wholesaler. That's how they've decided to do, decided to award to smaller entities over larger entities. That's how they've structured this grant program. However, you have to have a shovel-ready project. Not a lot of people have a shovel-ready project that they can go and say, yes, I'm willing to also wait for 3 months or 4 months, however long it takes. Yes.
So what is the ante to get into this poker game? And I guess kind of related to that, is it a recurring program?
It is a one-time funding.
Second one,
Second one's no. It's just the cost of grant application. If I had a ballpark, I mean, it might cost $25,000 to $50,000 put together all the packages and whatever they ask for.
kind of a fee to them.
Yep.
I guess my question, I have one more question, probably Mr. Evans, probably the guy, is what is the political influence going to be in this? Is there any value in us getting our lobbyists to talk to anybody about this? No, okay.
Because this is an agency decision. Okay. Staff recommendation. Good.
I think this is a great opportunity. I actually watched the last TWDB meeting, and agenda item 5, I think it was, or actually there's several agenda items. There were several entities that received grant funding per House Bill 500 or Senate Bill 1, and they were cities and also water districts. So, for all you mud districts listening, you could go for this grant money too.
Just hope that you're not competing with us.
Right, so all the So there were 4 or 5 entities that got approved last month, just,
Yeah, and those entities, as I recall, the language in House Bill 500 actually specified that they would receive this.
It did, yeah. And some were only like 5 million, or one's 11 million, but, you know, they're smaller, as big as ours. I hope we can get it, that'd be nice.
So do we have a motion to proceed with this?
I move we proceed with
If there was any action on this. Why we had, that was the previous.
If there's, well, no, that's probably a good point.
There's no action.
well, she does say we need a resolution of support.
Next
month?
Okay.
But
So that would be
if you
next-
want to have a motion to not do this, then you could let me know that, so then I wouldn't spend any time working on it.
Informally, without a vote, is everybody in favor of going forward on this?
Why don't we have a vote? Why not?
Mark said we didn't need one this time.
For the record, you know, we can say we supported this, grant funding. All right.
All good with it? Okay, good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. At this point, I think it would be wise to take a 10-minute break. This next section may take a while. It's 7:50. We'll call this meeting back to order. We are on item 10. A is the rate to discuss the rate study by Rack Ellis, and I don't know what one is. John can talk about that, okay.
Oh, excuse me. What's there for? Okay, now.
You can literally change it on purpose.
You will recall that Russ has spent a great deal of time and energy reviewing or presenting their rate study to you. They appeared before you at 2 different board meetings. I think they presented over 50 slides to you. I think I'm going to present 2 slides. That's it. So I am going to try to summarize what they were saying to you. And when they ended, no, not yet. When they ended up, they basically had 4 scenarios that they were trying to present to the board. Scenarios number 1 and number 3 on the upper left-hand corner and the lower left-hand corner. Those were 2 scenarios that they said that they were reluctant. No, they didn't say they were reluctant to talk about, but they were 2 scenarios that said that beware. We believe that there's a good chance that if these 2 scenarios played out, that the authority would confront a rating decrease. You recall right now we have a AA minus rating with Standard & Poor's, an A1 rating with Moody's, which is the highest A rating you can have, and an A+ rating with Fitch, which is the highest A rating that you can have. So we have very nice ratings at the present time. They said that their concern was that those 2 scenarios might lead to a rate decrease. I think I totally understand why they made that statement. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I totally understand why they made that statement. But remember, Cindy and I have been the ones that have had the, if not almost annual meetings with the rating agencies and had these discussions, and there's no doubt about it. The rating agencies are very concerned with our debt, and they're very concerned with what I'm going to refer to as our traditional coverage. What I always try to impress upon the rating agencies is to get them to focus on some ratios, which is not a ratio that they typically look at, but I try to get them to look at our total cash on hand that we have, and our total annual cash outflow defined as what are our normal month in, month out operating expenditures, and what's our annual debt service requirements. And if you look at our total cash on hand, including things that they would typically not consider, our debt service reserve funds, balance in our debt service fund, and every bit of cash that we have, it shows that we've had a good size pile of cash on hand. I also try to remind them that we can change our rates 12 times a year. I mean, we don't have to go to a higher authority. We don't have to go to a PUC and get their permission to set our rates. We're independent. We've got independence in terms of our rate setting. And the other thing that makes us look different is that one, we have a very large revenue base. We generate a lot of revenue, okay? And we have a very small annual operating expenditure vis-a-vis our revenue base. And you consider all of these factors, and as I said, cash on hand maybe being the most important one. I think that I hope that we'll be able to prevail and convince them again to continue to work with us because of those factors. Because we look a lot different than most of the wholesale water providers in this United States of America. So number one and number three are things that I've kind of discounted. They weren't really serious about those. Number four is really what they were recommending. And number four basically said, and I should also point out, Ruftellus came in and we always think about what are they recommending in terms of rates. But remember, they weren't just talking about rates now and what rates are going to be in the future. They were talking about changing the whole frame of reference for our rate setting. I've spoken to you on several occasions where we started talking about our adjusted revenues. Our adjusted revenues were something that we got the rating agencies and the bond insurance companies to sign off on back in about 2003. That turns out to be the wrong year, I'm sorry, but it's about that time. And what we were trying to show the rating agencies, give us some credit. We have a system, a water supply system for all of our constituents that's working very well. So it's just one that's owned by whatever it is, 150 different people. The rules of the road have changed, and so now we have to replace that system that's run by 100 number of different entities. And we have to comply by some new rules of the road. But we want to do that, and we want to implement it over time, but let us have a system that allows us to ease into it, if you will. And also, because we've convinced you rating agencies and bond insurance companies that the first thing we had to convince them of, we're not only as strong as our weakest link. I mean, we're a joint and several, guarantor of our debt. We convinced them of that, and now I find 20 years later, or whatever it's been, Cindy and I are constantly having to run, hey, you said you agreed with this on this format years ago, so don't kick us too hard. But there's no doubt about it, we're putting some pressure. We're putting some pressure on them right now. But what Ruftellus was trying to do is drop the adjusted revenue concept and just go with the traditional coverage methodology. Go with the traditional coverage methodology and also set aside a reserve and replacement fund. I would tell you, we've got a perfectly fund reserve and replacement fund right now. It's called our improvement fund. And anytime you board members wanted to use that for a project, you can use it. You can use it for a project. If you use it for a project, we're going to have to go back and look at what are our rates right now that we have, and can we do that without having to make an additional adjustment on our rates. And they also said, let's increase the operating reserve fund from 2 months, which is a very small operating reserve fund, to 6 months, which is a very traditional number. But back 20 years ago when we started all this, we thought of that. And we said, we got to have an operating reserve fund. But given the cash that we think we're gonna be accumulating, we don't need to go for 6 months, we can get 1 or 2 months, and everybody signed off on it, so we have 2 months to do. So, and I'm sorry, Reftelis also paid attention to the fact that, but you have to honor your bond covenants, and so they paid attention to all that in their rate increases. But you can see that.
So, excuse me, right now, we only have 2 months operating with red flag.
Yes, but please, I promise you, that's fine.
And that's exclusive of the agreement.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's a separate and distinct fund that we keep in our, set aside in our general fund, okay? Sorry, I lost my place.
Sorry.
That's all right. I started to say, they also tell us, make sure, we also acknowledge you've got to pay attention to your existing bond covenants. And so they were saying that, move towards more traditional coverage, reserve replacement fund, operating reserve fund. What they suggested was that on January 1 of 2026, that we should set the rates that you can see up in scenario number 4, which is, and I'll show you this again in the lower right-hand corner. They were suggesting that we should have rates where we were $5.13 for surface water and $4.68 for groundwater. And in fact, Jim, we can probably hit the slide, because what I've tried to do in this next slide is this is just their scenario 4, which they were recommending. And they were saying, implement that on January 1 of 2026. And that implied, what, a $2.08 increase in our rates? I think that's one of the reasons that we still have the same rates that we have today, because I think people looked at that and said, wow, that's a very big number, and I'm not sure of that.
Big number in terms of jump, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I misspeak? Oh.
It's a real big number, right?
Okay, what I was trying to communicate was that they were suggesting that we increase our rates on that date by $2.08
Right.
each way, and maintain the same 45-cent spread that we already have today. And I would also say they also tried to build and show what they thought the trend in the rates were. And I can understand their trends there, okay? Based upon what we know today, what the rules of the road are that we have to do today. Those are plausible numbers. I'm going to show you my own numbers, and mine are a little bit different than theirs. Doesn't mean I think I'm smarter than them in 2035, but I think that shows a trend. What I do think is reasonable for us to look at is what are the rates that they're showing as of, let's say, 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. I think that's plausible, but there's so many things that can happen between now and then when you get into those years further out. Like I said, you'll see my graph. My graph has a similar trend, but I don't think, and it doesn't mean that I think I'm smarter in 2035 than they are. I don't think anybody's smart. So, what am I thinking that we should do? Surprise, surprise, I think we've got to hit our rate structure right now. I'm hitting the slide, if you don't remember. I know it was there earlier. If you look at this slide, and I've really kind of, what should I be putting on the screen here? If I had my druthers, I would like to see you guys increase the rates in August of 2026, not from 260 to 310. I'd like to see you increase it by $1. But the problem I have there is, and when Mud's asked me to help with the rate studies, I get involved in the front end, and we turn it over to the operators and the engineers that have got software programs that can tell them what they should do for each bracket of users. But I would like to see the board increase the rate from, let's say, 260 to 360 and from 305 to 405. And if you did that, then I think those rates would stick for the balance of 2026 through and including December of 2027, and then I think we'd be hitting the rates again in January of 2028. But the issue that is, I think, difficult is that you usually see rate increases taking place, my experience is, for the most part, in the low water usage months. And I think that is a hard thing to ask you guys to do, which is to increase the rates by a buck in what would be a heavily usage month. But if you did, like I said, I think the rates would stand through the end of the year. So why did I go with 50 cents now? Well, we've had experience, we've increased our rates by 50 cents in July or August in the past a few years ago. That was done because we were trying to defer a rate increase because of COVID. And 50 cents, to my way of thinking, is, I'm not trying to take for granted any of the homeowners' monies that are out there. But I think there's a lot of homeowners that are located within our district that would mean maybe an additional $4 per month, something like that, because I think there's a lot of 8,000 gallon per month users. Amber's helped me out with some arithmetic that says, you know, that may be, but if you look on average, we're probably looking at an average user maybe using maybe about 11,500 gallons per month. I can't argue with her arithmetic, but I just, you know, in that case, the monthly increase would be something like $5.50, maybe between $5 and $6 per month for the average user. If you went with the dollar, that's with 50 cents. If you went with the dollar, obviously, then we're talking, it's probably going to be somewhere between $8 and $12 per month for the average user. And I think, you know, I think that's difficult for you guys as board members with constituents out there to cast that vote to increase it by that amount. But I did want to just point out that, so if you just, and I'm going to talk about 50 cents now, 50 cents in January, and 50 cents again in July of 2027. And if you increase the rates by 50 cents now, and you look at the green shaded area, that means that we'd be going to 310 to 355. And that means our traditional coverage for the year 2026, and the traditional coverage is the coverage that Ralph Tellis was telling us they wanted to see us be somewhere about 1.1 times, 1.25 times. It's also the coverage that if you look at the average A-rated water utility in the rating agencies, they would tell you that the average they see is probably 2.4 times. So we are way, way, way below what's normal in terms of coverage using the traditional methodologies. But we would end the year with traditional coverage of about 4.3 times. Our AG, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, 0.43 times. Okay. Not even one time coverage. You've heard us talk about
Hey,
it.
Cindy's listening.
Sorry.
She was listening.
Well, she's actually got her hand up behind my sports coat. I'm just a talking head. She doesn't do it. In any case, it means that our AG coverage, which is to say we have our own bond covenants, but then we run into our Texas Attorney General, and he's got his own rules and regulations that he wants to observe. Our AG coverage would be about 1.03, which is okay. And our adjusted coverage, which is the coverage that defines what we have to have in place in order for us to pass our additional bond test, which is 1.59 times. It has to be at least 1.2 times. And our improvement fund balance, a number that David watches very carefully, will drop down to about $184 million. That number in years past has been going back to 2022, 2023. I think we're talking about balances that were upwards of $350 million. So we burned that balance down quite a bit. if we look at the numbers, those coverage numbers compared to what Raftellus wanted us to be in 2026, they wanted us again to be at 468 and 513. They wanted us to have traditional coverage again. They're allowing us to ease into the traditional coverage that they wanted to see of 1.10 to 1.25. They wanted, it would produce AG coverage about 1.28 times, adjusted coverage of 1.91, and the improvement fund balance would have ended up at about $214 million. I think that they would also argue that we were at risk of a rating decrease if we did that. I already told you I wouldn't be suggesting this if I didn't think I had a pretty good shot at avoiding the rating decrease. You've asked from time to time what would be the implications of a rating decrease. Well, one, it wouldn't make any difference in terms of our borrowings with the Texas Water Development Board. I don't think I don't think they would come to us and say, well, you've let your fund balance slide too far, and therefore we're going to impose some additional, more onerous covenants on you. I don't think we would hear that from the Water Development Board. If we implemented bonds in the open public markets, I think that Raftellus asked me, I told him that I thought maybe the difference in our borrowing rate would be 0.2%, maybe somewhere between 0.1% of 1%, 0.2% of 1%. And when I expressed that in terms of how that would impact our rates, I came up with something that maybe that's a penny or two. And so again, I don't want you guys to think that, oh yeah, so we can let our rating go. No, you don't want to do that. That's not where you want to be. But I would also point out that if you look at our traditional coverage, that 0.43 versus, let's say, something that would be closer to about 1.1 or 1.25, that would require an additional about $109 million of revenue right now. And in order to generate another $109 million of revenue, that would mean hitting your rates by about $3.11. We do that, okay? But I just wanted to let you know that the adjusted rate covenants that we've had in the past, they have been buying something, and they really have made a difference. And it would come up when we had our rate discussions in September, when I would say that the long-term objectives that we could obeying our bond covenants. Make sure that we are keeping our rates as low as we can for as long as we can. And try to avoid any huge upward spike in terms of our rates from one time period to the next time period. If you go back and you look, I think our rate adjustments, our upward rate adjustments have generally been anywhere from 25 cents, 45 cents, maybe 50 cents or something like that. We're probably going to be looking at some increases in the future that are going to be a little bit bigger. So that's how I think we would end up if we increase the rates by 50 cents. I should also point out, only because I spoke to it before, stay with the slide. If we increase the rates by $1 right now to $3.60 and to $4.05, then those same numbers at the bottom of the screen would probably be, our traditional coverage would be about 0.64%. Our AG coverage would be about 1.23 times. Our adjusted coverage would be about 1.43 times, and our improvement fund balance would probably be about 139,000. Sorry?
If it was $1.
That's if we implemented the dollar increase right now and held it constant through 2027. Didn't make any changes until January of 2028. And excuse me. June, you can get this slide if you would. And so then.
Hang on 1 second, go back one, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Just for my understanding, y'all are trying to turn me into the financial person.
these ratios, tell me what the numerator and divider are in those ratios,
Okay?
or anything more complicated.
In the adjusted rate, the traditional coverage, it's basically just saying operating revenues minus operating costs. That's our numerator, okay? The resulting number divided by our annual debt service requirements. And that's the number where a lot of people have, 2.4 times on average, okay?
Instead of 24 or somewhere around.
0.43, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
The AG coverage number is one where the AG lets us take what are our net revenues as the numerator, a portion of the numerator, plus the dollars that we have put into our coverage fund, which may be required by our bond covenant, which is 25% of our maximum annual debt service requirements, or some additional amounts that we may have put into our coverage fund. That's the numerator divided by our annual debt service requirements. Okay. And then the third one, our adjusted coverage, basically says, let's take our net revenue plus our coverage, the balance on our coverage fund, plus the balance that we have in our improvement fund as the numerator, okay? Divided by our annual debt service, divided by our annual debt service requirements. We also use that not only to show what our current coverage, our current adjusted coverage is, but also to satisfy our additional bond status. And in both cases, those numbers have to be at least 1.2 times in order for us to have the authority to issue additional bonds when it comes time for us to close the bond issue.
Okay, so follow-up to that gets back to the apples and oranges question, how these different accounting systems work together. Are we looking at operational expenses at all, or are we only looking at what our debt payments are?
No, we're looking at, remember we have to, we're taking our revenues, as I defined each time, okay? Minus our operating expenditures, okay? Meaning the dollars that we then have available for debt service.
Okay, but, so in the revenue side, can we go higher than the $3 million we budgeted? And on the expense side, can we go to a more realistic number instead of an inflated number for the expenses?
And I'm sorry, I was listening hard, but I didn't track that $3 million number, okay? What I would tell you is when we're doing our long-term planning work, these models here upside down, okay, right side up. We're just looking at what is the revenue that we're gonna generate, what are the different categories of expenditures that we have. And we don't get into depreciation. And guess what? We don't even factor in any interest, okay? The interest that would make a difference to you would be the interest that we earn in our general fund, the interest that we earn in our improvement fund. And we don't consider that in allocation, okay? That comes into play at the end of the year when we figure out what our actual balances are. But when we're doing our long-term planning, we're not trying to guess what our interest is. It doesn't mean a little difference.
John, I'll give you an A on all that. You get an A grade, an A rating.
I don't know that it doesn't make a difference. We can talk about that.
Okay. So, where am I? I think I'm in 2027 June if you did the
We're ready for the next slide, yep.
I'm sorry?
You were ready for the next slide.
Right. So, we review in the first column, light green on the far left-hand side, we review what we were talking about in terms of a 50-cent increase in in August of 2026, how we would end up the year. That's a repeat of what you saw in the previous slide. And then I said we would have another 50-cent increase in January of 2027, an increase to 360 to 405. I don't have any numbers down below because I've already told you what it would be if we made that adjustment as of, in August of 2026. And then I have another rate increase in July of 2027, going another 50-cent increase from 360 to 410, from 405 to 450. And if we do that, then our traditional coverage, as I defined it before, would go up to 0.71%, 0.71%, sorry. Our AG coverage at 130 has to be 1.0. Our adjusted coverage at 1.48 times, and our improvement fund debt balance down to about 141 million. Tellus in 2027, we were going to be at 543, 588 for their rates. Traditional coverage of 1.16 times, again, somewhere greater than the 1.10 that they really wanted to see, but kind of inching towards 1.25 times. AG coverage of 1.75, adjusted 2.19, and an improvement fund balance of 230 million.
John, you're decreasing our improvement fund with these slides. The previous slide, it was increasing slide. I don't understand the two different slides.
You're right that I am chipping away at the improvement fund.
Yeah, we're still going in the hole with this.
Right, but I'm observing our bond covenants. I think we're gonna keep our rating, and I'm gonna make additional rate increases in future years, so that I think we would be okay.
And you're also increasing the rate in July, which you previously said you don't want to increase the rate in the, summer months, you want to do it in the fall.
Well,
Great.
okay, so then if you said to me, you said, well, then let's do this, let's not increase the rates by 50 cents in July of 2027, let's increase it by $1 in January of 2027. What I was trying to do is I was trying to spread it out and make small incremental increases. Remember, I started off by saying I'd like to have $1 right now in August of 2026. I don't think, I think that takes a lot of stomach for you to cast that vote during a heavy use month. Yes, ma'am.
So our improvement fund balance right now is 251,000.
Our improvement fund balance right now.
I mean, not 251,000, $251 million.
How about this?
It's not this,
It's $251 million, yes.
That's about right, yes.
okay, 251 million. And you have us going all the way down to 184 million by August.
By the end of 2027, I forget what number you just said.
That says 2026, 184 million.
But he said, if I caught him right, see, make sure this is right, John, that 184 at the bottom of the 2026 column is actually projected all the way to December of 2027.
No. I said, you're right. I said that if you made that rate increase of 50 cents now, okay, then you'd end up the year with about $184 million in your improvement fund.
If we do 50 cents now or 50 cents in August?
He means August, we gotta give them notice that we're ready.
Okay, so
If
we're
you
gonna
take
go
any
from,
action now, you're not gonna have rates that would change effectively until August of 2026, sorry. Which is, I'm calling now.
so, and then if it's a dry summer, we could get $30 million just because people are watering, right, over a couple months. So, it all depends on the weather, right?
I digress here. It's another strength of our credit, okay? And that is that, like I said before, a large revenue base and a very stable revenue base, in the sense that the big thing that causes any fluctuations in our revenues is the weather. We don't see a lot of fluctuations driven by economy, okay? And so that's another reason why I thought we were getting, I left it out, I'm sorry for digressing. But yeah, you're right. There's no doubt about it. I'm chipping away at the improvement fund. I'm chipping away at it, but I think we're okay.
So in 3 months, we're gonna be down,
At the end of 2026, you're down to 184 million.
but again, it all kind of depends on the weather, right?
Can you go back one slide?
Yes, you're right, it does depend on the weather, and I can't tell you what's gonna happen there. What we've done in terms of our revenue projections, we've basically been working with the same, water usage assumptions that Amber's developed. She's developed them based on, how much groundwater we're gonna be using, how much, surface water we're gonna be using, but all in, I think it means that we're gonna be seeing water usage increases of somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8% per year for the next several years. I think that's a round number. So that's what we've been assuming. Favorable.
Yeah, I had kind of a follow-up based on those two slides you went to. That's fine. How does the improvement fund directly figure into the ratio coverage? I know we're using some of it up, but how does that fall into the calculations?
Well, it falls into the calculation because, remember, on the adjusted coverage number, it was your net revenues, your coverage account, 1/12 of your annual debt service that's in your debt service fund. And it's the dollars in your improvement fund minus your operating expenditures divided by your maximum annual debt service requirements, not the current year's debt service requirements, but what the maximum is for all the bonds that are presently outstanding and for any bonds that you're in the process of issuing in December in any given year, which is what generally will be closed. So that's how it ends. So I use that balance in order to avoid having to have a higher traditional rate balance.
So it doesn't affect the other two ratios, it just affects that adjusted coverage ratio.
That's correct. Whereas the balance in the coverage account is also included in your adjusted coverage. It's in your AG test and it's in your adjusted coverage number. Yes, David?
So let's get to my question. Today, what would be how low can we go on the improvement fund before
Yeah.
I default?
Yeah, you ask this all the time, and I'll give you the same answer I always give you, it depends. Is that good enough? No, it's not. No.
Opportunity, no.
Right. But what does it depend upon? Well, it depends upon what's going on with our operating expenditures year in, year out. What's going on with our debt service? What's going on with our maximum annual debt service? And so that number is constantly changing in terms of what we want to have in there. You would say, well, we had too much when we had $350 or $300 million. Well, sitting here years later, I would say, yeah, maybe you're right. But remember, we also have, if you go back in time, we also don't know exactly what we're going to be confronting. And we call it the improvement fund, but it's referred to in the trade as kind of a rate stabilization fund. And we have it there so that we'll be able to avoid any radical increase in our rates from one time period to another time period. And I think that's the best answer. I know you want me to give you a dollar now. And I've actually thought about it. I can't come up with it. I think it just changes. Yes, sir.
Related to David's question, and I don't have a paper copy in front of me, I've got it on my laptop somewhere. But back when we were doing this 3 years ago, we had a bar chart that went back, what was it, 10, 15 years, maybe more on the improvement fund. And it showed it ramping up from very little until it had reached the 300, 350 range. At what point when it was ramping up,
was it enough? Because in those early years, it was 50 or less.
In the early years going back to, what, early 2010?
I don't remember the dates, but yeah, that kind of ballpark, I think it was.
Well, remember,
Find it.
remember, at that time,
And we have,
What? Oh, he remembers.
Well, I think I can help here. Part of your ramping up was a different philosophy. The philosophy was to try to keep rates as low as possible for as long as possible. And by ramping up that, it was to help in the back years. By having a larger fund, and like he said, it was to stabilize rates longer on more of this kind of trajectory, instead of what we're gonna see here is almost a $4 or $5 jump at some point, because we don't have any more funds.
he's one of my directors, and one of my friends, so I'm gonna say, that was excellent. That was really.
But that's not quite the question.
But remember, back then, we had smaller operating expenditures, we had lower debt service requirements, and we had lower maximum annual debt service requirements, so we didn't need as much.
So what were those ratios back then? I guess would be the related question. That's a fair question.
You mean, what were those numbers?
Yeah, if you were doing this presentation, what was that, 16 years ago, what were those ratios then?
And you want me to give you the number?
No, I'm just, we can look it up offline sometime.
Right.
It's a-
But
it's a
they were
good
the
thing.
same components, okay, qualitatively speaking, they were the same components, I had no idea what the
Okay.
So, this is basically my agenda item. And, we spent all that money on a rate study, and we have not talked about it since they presented. And we're just sitting on it. And in the meantime, we're losing $2 per 1,000 gallons of water that we sell. Sorry, $2 per 1,000 gallons of water that we sell. And to me, that's like, how are we even putting up with that?
I can tell you how. And that's because we're charging subdivisions like mine full price for not a drop of water. So that's 100% profit to us.
Sorry, what?
We are charging subdivisions like mine.
It doesn't get service.
Doesn't get a dime or a bucket
Correct.
of water. We're charging them, what is it, $2.65? $2.60. That's why we can do that. It's like an HEB having a lost leader. They're not losing money net, they're only losing money on Thanksgiving turkeys. It ends up saving the public.
But Mark, we're selling water for less than we're paying for it.
Not when you work in the overall enterprise.
What overall enterprise? You've got the figures there. Our improvement fund balance is going down every month. I mean, how can you say we're making money on water?
And that was, no, I said we're making money on the groundwater.
It loses it on the surface. So,
Temporarily, right.
so everybody's paying the same. That's what our philosophy is, everybody pays the same.
I guess it was.
Except for when we don't.
Yeah,
Pardon?
Except for when we don't.
that's a different discussion.
Yeah, that's what
there's
it
some
is.
pay, they're not receiving any service.
Right, but they're getting the benefit of not paying,
Everybody's paying the same.
not paying a disincentive.
But all of us at one time or another, we're doing the same thing. We're just now getting surface water. We paid for 30 years.
But remember, the concept was that we had a community problem, okay? And the community was everybody that was located in that
Yeah, we don't have respectfully defending Harris Galveston on the agenda. That's not the purpose.
I'm not trying to defend them, I'm just saying, but I do have to abide by their rules right now.
Yeah, I understand. But the modeling could, at some point, take into account, perhaps changing the rules, something else change. That's all I'm saying. Now, back on the water, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but is it still about 2/3, 1/3, Cindy, on how much groundwater revenue versus surface revenue? That should be changing a little bit. Well, we looked that off online, but we're not losing water net for the whole operation. What we're losing water on is the surface water on by itself only, until we draw down that improvement fund to some value that I think we could all accept, considerably lower than where it is now.
I think the more that we grow and implement and push more water to more receiving districts and stuff, that improvement funds needs to be a little bit higher. This is our backup.
How much backup do we need?
The rate
More
study,
than what we
Our
have now.
operating funds are $10 million.
the rate study recommended that the improvement fund be higher than it was before we started cleaning.
That was only to meet these other requirements that we've never met, because of this stuff that John just explained so well.
Right, so Rec tells, they want these nuclear coverage and all that, even though it's standard, but for us it'd be nuclear. I get that. But, to me, and it's oversimplified, but it's really easy to just drop rates and drop rates. But now when it comes time to, we need to make some adjustments upward. And, I talked with John and he said, he'd like to see $1. Politically, as an elected board, and coming up in a summer month, heavy usage, that's gonna be, and especially in an election year, when 3 of the board members are up for election, that's pretty much an impossibility. I get that. I just want to see us, I think we're off course. We've had these low rates for a while, and I just don't know how, the subsidence district, you're right, it's another topic. But we could have some adjustments in there that would help us out if we could get a pause, and say a 10-year pause. I don't, we're still kind of looking at doing that if we can. And that'll help us, but I just don't know how we can just.
So what what I would like to see happen is that step one is we decide for a date in like November, December, what we want our improvement fund to be. How big we want our improvement fund to be. When I got here, this has been my thing, I've been harping since I got here, for 3.5 years. That fund it now has gone down by about 100 million since the very beginning of this whole operation.
More like a 300 million.
No, the 350.
Was it?
It was a little over 300, I don't remember how much.
Maybe 330, somewhere in that range.
Do you know Cindy offhand?
Yes.
What it was 3.5 years ago.
What year?
Fall of,
2022.
late 2022.
2022, 349,073,000.
350 million. So what's the number, what's the right number? What I'd like to see is we pick the right number, and we have a discussion what that number's gonna be, and then we design the rates to meet that number year after year after year. We every year, right after budget, we do a rate increase or a rate decrease to keep that number in line. Because what I saw coming in here was we had uncontrolled growth into a fund that nobody could really explain what it was and where it was coming from. So, and I still think a lot of it comes from we underestimate our interest. We overestimate our expenses. I think a lot, and then at the end of the year, we just do the same thing again. We don't make any adjustments from year to year. That's where I think this thing keeps growing from. So we made these adjustments. It's seen exactly what I wanted to see. This has been coming down. In the last 8 months, it's coming out down by $42 million in accessible. So we're bleeding at about $5 million a year out of the improvement, $5 million a month of the improvement. So whatever that number is, tells us how many months we can continue at this rate before we have to make an adjustment. I actually like his dollar. I mean, it's 50 cents, 50 cents, 50 cents. I like that. I think that's doable, but I think it needs to be done in December. We need to roll with what we got now till about December.
John, what does it do to us if the improvement, if we did something like David suggested, we wait till after the summer, which actually, if you look at the plot on that improvement fund and the revenue on that same plot, it seems to peak, not literally in the summer, but it's like about September through November or something like that, typically, when you look at all the timelines involved. So what would the improvement fund do if we waited and made those changes till December?
Yeah.
Let's say.
So after the budget's been set, then we make it.
What would that draw the improvement fund down to at that point? I mean, because I think like David said,
Like I said, we're talking that, look at the screen. What if there's no rate change? Like, what's that, North Carolina blue, for the far left hand side?
so all the way down to 167 if we did nothing by the end of 2026?
Yes, sir.
So this rate, so we've been doing this, and now we're expecting it to really yield.
Yes, sir.
And that's caused by, we have more stuff coming due.
Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I really don't want to see you do that. I think I really want to see you make some changes right now. And not only that, well, if you believe in 50-50-50, then what I would be hoping for in August or next month or whatever the timing is when we set these rates, you not only set the rate for that August, but you also set the rate for January of 2027 based on what you know right now, and also July of 2027. Because I want to communicate to the GWB and I want to communicate to the rating agencies and the bond insurance companies that it's the same group and they're taking a look. You're not, obviously, you can change your rates 12 times a year. You're not your rep, and I don't want you to do that as a plan is, well, we'll just tell them that, but we're not really going to do it, you know. But I think it's action that you're supposed to start taking. And I don't think, David, you can, and maybe I was not hearing correctly. I don't think you can say, let's decide right now what we want our improvement fund balance to be. And that's going to be the basis of our budgeting. I don't think that's it. I think there's other stuff that's
Well, that seems to be, from the way I see it at least, the part of the budget that for the longest time is ignored. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
And we've helped you out.
And we've got it down, we whittled it down significantly.
Right. And that's why
And I look here, 141, that's actually.
It's actually higher
Well,
than I think it needs to be.
how about this one? Maybe it's not bad. Could I have, what screen am I on here? Yeah, could I have the next slide? And you can see that I'm whittling down the improvement fund, but look at my rate increases. Yeah, I'm gonna have a relatively insignificant rate increase between 2027 and 2028. But then start looking at my jumps there. You know, those are no longer that's not going from 2028 to 2029. I have to do that based on what I know right now.
And that jump is based on the fact that how much bonds coming due, right?
Well, it's based on the fact that, one, I think our operating expenditures are going to increase. I think we're gonna sell more bonds, we're gonna have greater debt service requirements, and we're gonna have a greater maximum debt service requirement, even if that maximum occurs, 20 years from now. Yes, miss?
I think we need to renegotiate with the city, and I think we need to negotiate with the subsidence district.
And I'm not saying that that's incorrect. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not saying, but I can't be, developing plans of financing or, recommendations on rates based on those things happening. That's all. All I can go by is what are the rules of the road today.
Well, the city of Houston's the one that sucked up a lot of our water. So I still stand firm on, I don't see why the ratepayers, my neighbors, they're all retired, why they're having to foot this bill. It should be more on the city of Houston. And the subsidence district needs to give us a break. We've got to get back to talks with them.
So what I'm hearing is, you believe it's a regulatory problem and not a construction problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is.
So,
And that needs to be approached differently than what we're talking.
There's nothing we're gonna do on here with all these rates that keeps us from that 1060 at the end. Because that's all, unless of course it gets worse and we have to pay the penalty on top of that.
right.
Or we get a pause, or we
we
start
get-
paying off some of our earlier bonds.
Right, yeah, but eventually, that's what it's, that's the debt. It's like your home finances. When you're getting all the loans, you go, boy, I am flipping rich. And then 10 years in, you're like, oh my God, I am broke. And this is what the people here in the county are gonna see, that we built all this, and now we have to pay for it. Right now, they're giving it free.
Why just 10 years, Kevin? Why don't we go for more than that? We don't even know yet if we've done any good for the first 15.
So I agree with that. We don't know. We don't, and that's, and it'll be part of the presentation. We don't know it. All this work we've done, all this money we've spent, is it that good? And especially when you got, and again, I bring this up all the time, Montgomery County. They're pumping out water like it doesn't cost them anything.
And what was it that, I believe it was Andy said several months back, that even if we continue all the way through 2035 and beyond,
It only buys us 4 inches.
It only buys us 4 inches on a flat surface for miles around. I mean,
You didn't have surface water, you'd run out of water.
do you need to leave, John, or?
Do I need to leave?
No, not you, John. Shoot.
Well,
I'm gonna probably throw that in nicer places.
I wasn't looking at you.
if we were to put this off, or decide this for December or something, in the meantime, let's get going on, what does it look like if we were to renegotiate with the city?
They're not gonna do it.
The city, and I think that the subsidence district, I don't know. They have given us one little concession, we can buy expired credits.
I would have said I agree with Jerry, his last statement, which is having surface water brought into this area is keeping it from dying. We have gotten a lot of benefit just economically
because, and economic, I mean, the development and the prosperity of the area, because there's only so much ground.
I don't think that's good.
You don't think so?
No, I think it is now. I think it is now, but at $10, I don't think that's gonna be the case. People aren't gonna see it that way when it's $10.
Yeah, if you start pulling.
Well,
data,
okay,
then-
even if we stop now, we've got all this,
I know, it's gonna go up. It has to go up. I get it, it has to go up.
Well, it's because you have to spend another $3.5 billion to.
by 20, yeah. If we were just to be able to stop now, since we're having a free-for-all discussion here.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is bad.
Yeah.
If we stop now, we've still converted a lot of area, we've brought prosperity into the area. Yes, it's cost us some money, but hopefully, we would never, if we stop now, we wouldn't see, $10 water. That's
it. Yeah, maybe.
No, if we stopped now, we would not see $10 water, that's first.
Right, because $10 water assumes that you're gonna have increasing operating expenditures, and also assumes that you're gonna spend $2 billion. So, I hate to approach the project management crowd here. Gene, can I see the next slide?
Thank you.
So, what I'm, as I said before, angling for, that we'd start the process next month, we'd have the public hearing, and that we would, at that point in time, decide or tell our constituents that where we're headed is 50 cents in August, 50 cents in January, 50 cents in July. If we do that, we're at least turning things around a little bit in terms of what our rates are. And I think it also keeps us in decent shape with the TWDB, and I think it preserves our rate. Can't guarantee it, but I think if we did that, all those things would happen.
And you can program that into your rate order so that happens automatically. You don't have to revisit this, at least for another year and a half.
I'm fundamentally against that. I think elected officials it should be painful for them to raise rates. They should have to do it every single time, not increase water rates automatically like City of Houston. I vehemently oppose that philosophy. Sorry. That's what we're here for.
And I think that this is the one part of what, yes, rubber stamping, that's the wrong term, but approving what June tells us, or what June suggests we buy, and what Amber suggests we buy is the easy part. The hard part is determining what we're gonna charge the customers, because they're the taxpayers. So, I think we should look at it every quarter. We should go up or down every quarter. This should become standard fare, not off into the distance. We're gonna put it off for 8 years. We're gonna put it off for 2 years. I think it's as early as every quarter.
I think your mud districts would probably have a royal fit over that.
Yes.
I think people have, we got several pages of Google comments earlier this evening.
Saw that.
What's gonna happen to those pages if we're hitting $8, $10, or 12?
You're right. No argument.
No one that is here today will be there on this board, including the general manager when we get to $10, I guarantee.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it'll be somebody else's problem, that's true. The other thing,
But Ron, unless we get a pause, like Kelly said, it's mathematically gonna happen.
so here's the other thing that I.
Doesn't help you. A pause doesn't help you because then your construction costs just increase over that period of time, and so you pause it 5 or 10 years.
Well, unless the pause means we don't have to build it.
And you get to pay off some of your debt.
And you get to pay off some of your debt, yeah. The other thing is, that I noticed from all these comments you brought around you, is that they all seem to be, there's a misconception as to.
No kidding.
Who gives them the water? Because they think that somehow we're charging way more than, they're getting it from the mud, and the mud's free. That's what they think. Yeah, that's $53 fee on a $17 bill. Yeah, because we supply all the flipping water. Well, the mud's not selling anything except for the sewer. So I know, but
That's why I don't pay attention to next door.
well, I know.
Just get angry with all the motion and.
Yeah. But you know, maybe
How can he say
there's
that?
a better understanding that needs to come out from us about the muds. We sell a wholesale product to the muds. The price they charge, anything above that wholesale is what they're doing for delivering a little bit of it, but also for their sewer, also for their landscaping, also for their parks, also for their sidewalks, also for the rest of it. And if they're not doing very much, their bill looks a little tiny compared to ours, because if all they're really getting services from their mud is water, then ours look like we're the only one providing anything to them. That's probably true. They're not getting much of it.
I mean, that's an insult.
I don't care, Jerry.
That's an insult.
Jerry, seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
You need to shut down.
Treat everybody the same.
That's what, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no. Yeah, go ahead and get law enforcement.
You know how, change the subject a tiny bit.
Yeah.
You know how the regulatory agencies, they've all gone up on, agent acquisition? Was 3 to 6 months and now it's 27 months? Why don't we work on fighting that? That's costing us a lot of money. Time and money. You know, it's just, I think there's things, there's other things we can be working on. Let's get our lobbyists to, go talk about it. We haven't done that.
I think June and Amber are probably working those sides pretty hard.
I don't know. I don't know if they have time to do that.
So,
There's other things we can do to save money.
I think at this hour, this is my opinion, we're probably not gonna be able to schedule a public hearing on rate increases for next week.
I was about to say, I thought we were all agreed.
And I heard some talk about wait till December.
Well, I think, if everybody's on the chart, that everything, if we start now, it always falls in the hot part of the year. If we start in December, it'll fall in the spring, it'll fall later if it doesn't hit the cycle quite as hard if we do it that way.
Then you're always hitting one of the increases is in the hot part.
Well, that's only if you do it that way, that,
So you could have October and then March or something where.
Well, wait, just a second. So, what are you suggesting that maybe I could come up with a number that said, and we take the action, quote, now, begin next month? On what we believe that number is supposed to be if effective January 1, 2027. It's not gonna be $1, it's gonna be more than $1.
Well, yeah, that depends on the expense estimates and our level of improvement. And what our revenue comes in, because our revenue always comes in higher than, but I think that's why David wanted to watch it at least.
Yeah, no, I did, I want that. We've gotten 8 months since this last increase, and we've seen finally, really in the last 3, what I was hoping we'd finally see, where we saw some movement in that chart. We're starting to see some movement.
But that could, big if, I don't know whether, that could almost go away if we had a dry summer.
Yeah, that's true. If this rain stops next week, it doesn't come back again until January. But who knows? And it may rain all summer, we may decide we have to raise rates even faster.
But what if we just have, the water usage, what if we just use the water usage projections that Amber's developed it? And if it turns out that we're a little bit drier, then it's a little bit better off. We've got room to be a little bit better off, okay? Look at those traditional coverage numbers.
But the ratepayers have a lot of room left to be a little bit better off. Particularly given the recession possibly around the corner, and gas prices going up.
Remember, I don't take lightly that we're extracting money.
I know.
I don't take that lightly.
But that's why we're here.
And what I've got to do is at least try to give you some guidance in terms of what I think you have to do from a financial advisory perspective.
And I like what you've done. I like what you've done. I think it's a good in between what I would optimally like to see and what and you know, theirs was just too it was too easy. It was like, oh, we'll set all this up and you guys won't have to worry about a damn thing. You can just go home, don't even need a board, we'll just set this up.
If I was looking at my own expenses at home, I'd be looking at, oh, let me, call the phone company, call this company, call that company. Can I get on a better rate plan? Can I fix this? Can I do that? Can I eliminate this or that? And I think we need to be talking about subsidence district, the city of Houston, going and talking to these agencies about, getting these easement acquisitions faster. Let's look at other things. Let's look at all the options. I want them to help.
The elephant in the room is the debt. You've got to stop the debt and pay some of it, or you can't avoid what John's predictions are. I mean, that's what's right.
And I can't make believe that it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
You can hope that. Exactly. Or less.
Depends on how many credits June can buy, I guess. Can you buy some of this, June?
Ron asked, can you buy a truck list?
It looks like 251 million.
Okay, just so we can make a little progress tonight, can I suggest something? Maybe to John and Cindy? What if y'all go back, like Kelly said, we're not gonna agree on anything tonight. What if y'all go back and look at this a little bit differently and run the numbers on what happens if we only do 50 cents in December and if we only do $1 in December? Whatever you wanna do going forward from that. See what those turn out. We'll put those on the agenda for next week and we'll talk about, or next month, we'll talk about those too.
Maybe you might want to look at, say, 75 cents for September,
I think they're giving you some flexibility.
So, you said December. You didn't say January.
December's after the election.
Well, January's fine with me.
No, I just, that's why I wanted to ask.
No, you said January's fine. I think that's the way you had said everything else, that probably works.
Is that what it
Because
is?
you'd have to take the action you said.
If you want it effective December 1st, the action needs to be taken about 2 months.
Just go ahead and go with January like y'all been doing it, and that way you don't have to go changing calendar stuff on early. I'm not trying to make it more complicated.
Yes, you are.
Okay, do we have any other ideas on increasing water rates?
So, Mark, seriously, I do want to make, so what you want to see is what do we look like? You know something, I tell you, I don't think just 50 cents, $1 for 1 year beginning in January, or 50 cents for 1 year beginning in January of 2027.
Or maybe do 50 cents again 6 months later, something like that.
Wait, I just want to make sure, I don't think the 50
No,
cents is
automatically.
gonna work. I think the 50 cents may get us in trouble with our additional bonus test. our adjusted additional bonds, that's, and we'd be in a position.
Well, just try it.
Yeah, so for the next meeting, can you prove that?
And if that doesn't work, like you got told, which is probably right, then if we did it again, like in September or November or something, maybe sooner, what fixes it? Does that make sense?
I got it.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
You bet.
yeah, very informative. Okay, I think we've probably covered 11 mostly. If anybody wants to talk about that a little more.
No, we're not gonna be spending that money.
Well, there is one other potential use for it, and I just wanted to get maybe some more facts from John and or Cindy on whether this is even a possibility. If we were just trying to get rid of the improvement fund, which I'm not, unless it's going to ratepayers, but if that was what the goal was, could we buy down this relatively high interest rate debt that the MUDs hold on us? And buy that off?
I know.
Who's paying off some of the conversion credits?
Well, I think,
No, it's.
whatever it's called, yeah.
There were the capital contribution credits and then there were the chloramination credits. Chloramination credits were, the capital contribution credits done back in the early 2000s, okay? Right. That was all done, I think there were 2 or 3. They were all done at interest rates that reflected what the authority's borrowing rate would have been at that moment in time. Not what the MUD's borrowing rate was, because our borrowing rate was lower, because we had lower cost of issuance than MUD would have, and we had lower coupons. And so they put their money up and they got a credit based upon our borrowing cost at that point in time.
Okay.
And my initial reaction is, I don't recall if we have any ability to do that, to defease that obligation, because those are just contracts, that's not a bond. So it wasn't set up like a bond, so I don't know if we have the ability to do that. And
So is it endless, it is an unending contract? It must have been
no,
timing.
it ends, it has a 30-year final maturity from the date that each of
It doesn't have an early payoff in it?
I don't think so.
Maybe we should check that at least, see if it's even an option.
Yeah, I don't think it is, and even, I don't know, sitting here right now, I don't know why we want to do that, but I just have to think, it's not an idea I've thought of before, so I just have to think about it,
Okay, fair enough. And if we can do it, then, I mean, maybe there's no economic advantage, maybe we just can't do it anyway. Could get 2 no's on that. And Cindy, remind us all, that was around 60 million total?
I just had it, it's in the audit,
You just sent it to me, but I forgot what the total was.
the audit on page 23 talks about capital contributions and the remaining balances, principal and interest amounts, from 26 through 2038 is 63.3 million.
Okay. And what Cindy told me for the rest of the board is that there's basically 3 different tranches of that are at different interest rates. I think ranging from 4.5 to almost 6 or something like that.
So, refresh my memory.
In 2003,
We have this
2005.
capitalized interest, every day you,
Capitalized, there's capital contributions. When our initial legislation said that when we were issuing bonds, we shall ask the districts if they want to give us contributions in lieu of us selling the capital, issuing bonds for that capital amount. So we had to offer the districts the opportunity to give us capital funding. and we reduced the capital need on what we borrowed, because we received capital funding from the districts. So say we needed $100 million in capital, and 20 districts all gave us, you know, $1 million. So there was $20 million that we got from districts, so we only borrowed $8 million.
So who did that give an advantage for? What's the advantage?
It was done for two reasons. It was done because some districts thought that they were losing some of their autonomy, okay? And this was their declaration of independence, okay? And I frankly think there were other situations where there were consultants that got paid based on if districts sold bonds or not, but the consultants were encouraging the districts to sell bonds.
Oh, so this wasn't cash they had, this was bonds they floated?
Some districts sold bonds so that they could make the contribution.
At the time,
They may have had a better credit rating than us, but because of mud bond cost of issuances and just the local market versus, you know, we had a lower borrowing cost than most. I don't remember anything where, you know, where our borrowing cost was higher than others. I don't think.
I'll forget I asked. Can we, do you want to move on? I would like to move on, but I would like to have a little better explanation next time we approach this subject.
Of that particular part.
Yes.
The history is interesting, but I'm more interested in that.
Okay, I guess I'm the other way, but.
Okay, let's move on. If there's no objections, move on to 12, the proposed conservation groundwater rate.
Like everybody got this on their file papers. So Kelly wanted to know if we did what we suggested, what would be the increase on average to, what would be the increase in revenue over what we get now? And it's 5%. It's not huge. It's virtually nothing for almost everyone. There's four buds that are particularly affected by it, and some of them I don't quite understand where these numbers are coming from exactly. So, Vilna Bud, they are partially served, plan to be fully served. They're running 50% groundwater, 46% surface water. I guess that's fine, but I suspect, just the little thought in my head suspects that groundwater being cheaper gives them incentive to not flip those numbers.
So on Vilma, they have 2 water plants, and we're connected to one of their 2 water plants.
So their water plant can't, their
The
existing
second water
water.
plant does not have groundwater or surface water available to it. They actually have requested it, and it's in the plan for the 80% conversion.
And they have no interconnection between their 2 plants.
They may have some capability to go in between their plants, but you're also gonna have hydraulic limitations of how your system's set up to not necessarily push both directions, depending on where your water plants are.
Because then you've also got some that they're partially served and they're 100% surface water. So that seems strange to me that that's the category that they're in, that they're partially served and they're 100% surface water.
Depends on how the system is built and the hydraulics.
So are we planning on building more than 100% effectiveness to them? What's the plan on that? If we're saying they're partially served and we plan to do more and they're already 100%, what is the plan? Or are they at 100% because it's December numbers and not July numbers?
It can be all of the above. So it could be, if they're partially served right now, that means that they have multiple water plants. If they're using in the month of December 100%, then it means that they were able to get their whole system served by that one water plant. But in the summer, they might not have enough that they need to kick on their second water plant then. It might be a different analysis if you looked at it in the summertime than in December.
And so is there anything outstanding though about WCID 110, they're a little bit strange. And in Mud 5, Harris County Mud 5, Ponderosa Forest.
So Mud 5 has multiple water plants. I believe they have 5 different water plants, and we currently serve 2 of them.
Okay, that's fair enough then. Okay.
And, Wiki 110, I believe that they have 2 water plants, and the second one we're planning to serve on, the 39 or 40 series. I actually think they're soon up on deck.
They're on different sides of I-45. So it's.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the interconnectedness. Yeah, so each one of these has their own little unique story about their individual system and how they're set up, and if we aren't going to every water plant that they have, they may not be able to utilize it all at one water plant.
And I guess with the conversion rate, the point of the conversion rate is not to raise a whole bunch of money. The point of the conversion rate is once there's availability of surface water to you, that you pay the same rate as everybody else. You're no longer subsidized for pumping groundwater. That's the way I look at it. I don't know that at this point, even in our charter, to go to the other extreme and say the rate should be the same across the board for everybody, no matter what. On everybody, the rate should be the same for everybody.
Need ground and surface water?
Yeah.
Hey, Amber, I don't want to beat the dead horse here, but if you look down to, for example, 468, they've got 4 lines from the bottom. They've got 8614, although fully served, and that seems a higher amount of groundwater than the other fully served, just kind of glancing through this. Do you have any insight as to why?
Nope, can't tell you anything. I can tell you in the month of December, there wasn't anything that I can recall that was a service outage. Brian can't remember anything in service outage, so the 2 of us say we don't remember a service outage.
So this is just 1 month though?
So that's 1 month, 1 mud. Now, could they have been doing something at their plant? Possible. Could they have had it down for several days while they're working on something and then they're using groundwater? Those kinds of details I don't necessarily know.
But this is for a month, we could get a trend.
So you could, in theory, aggregate data. All this data is not in one location, so we'll start with that. All this data is not in one location, and this was about 4 hours of work to even come up to this point of where was all the data. And how do we get it all in one location? So we do have some limitations in terms of getting the trends. That's why getting the AMI phase 2 and getting all the surface water meters on AMI is of critical importance to us.
And what's the hold up there?
Just getting it pushed out and getting it done. The existing water receiving facilities, we've been looking at a lot of it. The meters that are out there aren't the kind that can easily be converted over. They require a modification to the control panel to then make them speak the right language to our AMI system. So but it's all in the works.
One other one you might be able to, Kleinwood.
Kleinwood is not one that I have researched myself.
They had a water plant down.
But they have multiple water plants.
Yeah.
If it says partially served, they have multiple water
It
plants.
does not plan to be fully served.
That means we're never planning to serve their second water plant.
Okay, so they're running 30%. They're not meeting the conversion goal on their own. So we're.
She's saying they have a water plant down.
That water plant down in last December? Okay.
And we don't mandate, you know,
That's why ultimately for some of these trades, a bigger picture would be useful to have.
Correct, but each of those would require me to probably call and talk to the operator for each one of them to say, all right, what was going on in Aqua Texas at Candlelight Hills? What was going on? And,
Yeah.
you know, and not to say that that can't be done, it can.
No, it's not a good use of your time. I would agree with that.
Okay, so what's the summation at this point on the agenda item?
I'd like to see, at least for the people who are receiving, that we have one, if they're on surface, that's the only way. But I think that once they've received surface water, we've done our part.
Except for where we don't run a surface water to their other plant.
Yeah, so I think we maybe need to do a write-out for those people. It's a very small list compared to us about, I guess it's about a third.
Yeah, I actually added another column onto the one that you sent out and added exactly that calculation in. So I said if you exempted the people who are partially served because they can't, they don't have the availability to watch them, you only looked at people that are fully served, you were talking about, and if we're looking at just groundwater revenue at the current rate, so compare this number to the first column of the 483,000, it's $62,000 worth of revenue. So that gives you an estimate of what percentage of this revenue is for people that are fully served, that in theory, what is the reason why? Maybe they were exercising their wells, maybe there was something going on, maybe it was inexcusable. But about $62,000 worth out of that 483.
So the way to address it potentially would be just get rid of the differential. For that.
Well, if you're bumping up the groundwater rate, it might help
Well, it
John
would be
in his calculation.
simple.
Good night, John.
He's gotta go run some numbers.
Oh, okay.
It would be simple and not have all the one-off things for each mud being different.
Well, I think the reason we had different rates because people are, the ones that are pumping groundwater have extra costs in it.
I understand.
Yeah, and we weren't providing them.
I understand.
And at that point, we weren't providing them anything.
Right, we were providing them not paying the disincentive fee.
So that's, yeah, there is that. We were keeping the government.
That's why it was all,
Oh, yeah.
you tried to find the best model that would fit the whole community.
I just say that I don't think the model from 25 years ago is necessarily the model today.
Okay, so do we need anything voted on tonight?
I'm too tired to go to the yard.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
It's been so long. I guess I'll kill it. Been a long. Okay, so we'll just leave that one for now.
Yeah, we can
Continue later.
continue it later.
Okay, we get to 13, 14, and 15. Any discussion of potential future agenda items by the board? Start with Ron, work down. Yeah, Ron's not here. Ron just left. Okay, all right.
No, I'm good.
No from me.
Okay, next regular meeting, tentatively on June the 1st. Any motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Or adjourn at
9:21.
9:21.